Excited to get to talk about this movie. It was quite the blast from start to finish. Despite everybody that's involved in it, it snuck by me during development, so it was quite the surprise. What about it really drew you to the project?
I actually didn't read the final draft of the script before signing on to the project because it kind of didn't exist. The project had switched hands a bit in terms of director. But meeting Marcus Dunstan, and I talked to him over Zoom, and he kind of gave me this incredible pitch that I wish I had filmed because it was so amazing, in depth, and theatrical. His vision for this movie and my character and just everything. It was so exciting and so vibrant and scary and something I felt like hadn't been done before. And so just, the chance to work with him and bring his vision to life really excited me.
So since you do mention the not final script being done when you signed on, I had talked to Marcus and he mentioned that as well. And so I'm
Yeah,
I'm curious what that like. Words fail me right now.
it's
I'm
okay.
curious, what was that like for you, really developing that character further with him without a final script set in place?
I felt like it gave us freedom. It was kind of nice. I mean, it was a little anxiety inducing, because to sign on to something that you don't really have all the pieces to can be, worrisome. But I really had a lot of trust in Marcus, and he had a lot of trust in me, and he gave me a lot of room, all of us, a lot of room to play, and like you said, create these characters, and already these characters have like this stencil for them in terms of the stereotype, the high school stereotype that they play. But Marcus allowed us to really expand on that and make multi-dimensional characters that go through this journey and start out as one thing and really transform into something else.
So with that said, then would you say you personally had any major inspirations from the high school film or TV genre for your character?
I've played a high school student a lot in my life. I've also been to high school, and I grew up a huge fan of John Hughes movies, and so I knew kind of the idea. Like I said, I had the roadmap to it, but the detours that we took, I think, make it all the more exciting as an Asian American woman to see me as the forefront, the main character in this film, which is not something I ever saw in a John Hughes film. Was really exciting, and I think that lends to the dimension that I was able to bring to the character. Although we don't outright acknowledge that she's an Asian woman, which is not always the case in real life either. She is someone who feels like an outsider, feels invisible, and I think that people in marginalized groups tend to feel like they can't fit in, they don't fit in. And what I love about Ever and a decision that Marcus and I made is that she gets to come into her own, and she doesn't succumb to the pressures of being like everyone else. In fact, she breaks away and she follows her morals and her values and her inner voice to essentially save everybody. And I think that that's a great metaphor for what it means to have a sense of self and self empowerment, and that in the end, there's this monologue that Ever says to her best friend Tamara. She's like, people, it's not about which groups do we want to fit into, it's about which groups would be lucky to have us as we are.
Yeah, that was a really powerful speech in the film. I was very surprised and moved by it when it came up because I had never really I got the message, but I never heard it put that way before. So I really dug it. Since you do mention Tamara, I mean, so much of this film works because of the cast's chemistry and rapport with one another. And so I just got done talking with a lot of the guys, but I mean, what was it like for you, building that rapport with everybody off camera before bringing it into each scene?
Yeah, we didn't really have a lot of time prior to shooting to really, like bond and get to know each other. But I have to say, with Tamara, it was, or Ali Gallo, who plays Tamara, it was pretty instantaneous, and I think that was, a bit of luck, and also probably casting John McClary. Just I worked with him before, and maybe he knew who would work with me or who I would work with. I don't know. But it worked out very lovely. And I kind of like to make this joke, but it's also very true, is that we were shooting in New Orleans in the summer, June, July. And it was so hot. It was, and we were doing a lot of stunts, and it was just very physically taxing. And I think that bonded us, like being in the trenches together, truly bonded us. We supported one another, and it felt like we were moving very fast, and we just had each other's backs, and I think that really lent to the chemistry that we have on screen.
So that does actually kind of lead into my next question, was about the physicality of this shoot, because yeah, everybody so far has mentioned the hot New Orleans summer, and
Yeah.
there is quite a bit of action in this film. So I mean, what was that like for you, getting the stunt work in? How much of the stunts did you do? Like, can you go a little further into that?
Well, we had an incredible stunt team. They were just so capable, so consistent, and so game for anything. Um, Angel was my specific stunt double, and she was just fantastic. She really makes me look awesome. But a lot of us really did a lot of our own stunts, and there's a lot of running around. It's high pace, it's high energy, and it was it was so fun. That's kind of part of why I love to do action, thriller, horrors, because of that element. And I think it really adds to, not only are you emotionally stepping into this character, but you are physically. And so some of that exhaustion, some of that fear, it's real to an extent, and you can use that to highlight where your character is at mentally and emotionally.
So what would you then say was your favorite and your most challenging stunt that you had to perform?
Whew. Well, I can tell you my least favorite was running up the stairs. Did that a lot. And I was always constantly afraid I was going to fall. um, I mean, oh gosh. There was one, and it seems small, but I had a lot of fun doing it. It was when they're just starting to be attacked on the bus, and everyone's running out the back, and there's this one part where Ever goes to reach and try to save Candace, and she kind of falls back. And when we did that, we did it really quick. Actually, it was kind of like a scene that we were trying to squeeze into the end of the day, and there was just a mat on the ground, and I just kind of got to fall back, and that was really really fun and cool. And then, I mean, I'm wielding a sword at one point, and there's fight scenes, and I don't know. I think that was just really fun to do, and we kind of learned it on the spot. We didn't have a ton of rehearsal time, but like I said, we had a great stunt team and coordinator, and it was just a lot of fun to be able to be so physical with one another. It was awesome to see the girls in the end, like, just be badasses, and so I really enjoyed watching that.
So you've been a part of the horror genre for quite a while now. You even mentioned that you like why you like being a part of it. But I'm curious, do you also did even before joining it, were you a fan of watching the horror genre as well?
Oh, absolutely. I love horror. I love like being in it. I love watching it. To be honest, I wasn't super familiar with Marcus's work beforehand, and then after I had met him, I'd done some research, and I just love his. I don't know. He's so different, and he really expressed that to me when he was pitching this movie. And I really liked the idea of joining a project that was different from anything I had been in and anything I had watched. But I love horror. I tend to like psychological horror a lot. But I love a good zombie movie. I like Train to Busan. I love Zombieland, the campiness, and I think that is maybe a little comparable to our film in terms of genre. World War Z. Yeah, I love horror, and I just love feel the being in it and watching it, the emotional roller coaster you get to go on, the um, adrenaline that you get, and it can be an escape, I think, for people watching it.
Yeah, definitely. I think I that's part of why I eventually fell in love with the genre, was just that thrill ride of like, all right, let's put aside the real problems of the world and let's just focus on supernatural fears.
Exactly, right, safely from my couch.
Yeah, exactly. So with that said, then, since you mentioned the psychological thrillers, we did unfortunately see the end of I Know What You Did Last Summer recently, and I'm curious what that was like for you getting that news, and if you had heard about possible story plans for a potential season two while you were making it.
I have to say, Sarah Goodman is a very tight-lipped woman. So, I mean, I didn't even know the ending or like where my character was going to land until like more than halfway through shooting, and I bugged her, I bugged her about it. But I think when we heard the news, obviously it was disappointing. I had such an incredible time working with all those people and then also creating the character that I mean, as controversial as she may be in terms of her choices, she was very interesting and exciting and challenging to play, and I really fell in love with her. And so it was disappointing, but I'm glad that I feel like we had such a solid season, and I got to experience working in Hawaii with all of those people. And I think potentially, I remember hearing something about potentially we would have um, been able to dive in a little bit more into the cult in another season. But I'm happy with the way the first season ended, and I'm happy with the way it came out, and I'm very proud of that show.
Yes, season one did blow me away. I will admit, I did not know what to expect given film to TV, but it worked out well. And so, with going back to Unhuman, what would you say were some of the biggest creative challenges for you getting to the heart of your character?
Hmm. Well, luckily, I feel like everyone was so supportive of one another, especially Marcus, producer Alex, and I just feel like they really gave us room to play. So, in terms of difficulty, I don't feel like there was a lot there, because they allowed it was just such a collaborative, safe environment to work in. I think I like to do a lot of prep before I do any project. I my whole saying is you do all the prep before and then you throw it away when you get to set, and then you become a lot more intuitive. At least that's how I like to work. So in the prep stages of it, I really had to dive deep into like go back to that time in high school and how did I feel, and I found a lot of similarities to how I ever feels. And in a way, I think that I I gave Ever the ending, or like in her transformation, um, in terms of like who how I wish I had behaved in high school. I wish I had been a little bit more true to myself. I wish I had found a little bit more self acceptance and decided, I'm not going to just please the people around me. I'm going to stand up for what I believe in, and which obviously pans out very well for her. She ends up saving everybody and is a total badass in the end. And so I kind of got to rewrite history of like my high school self, but I had to really acknowledge the fact, I mean, it's inevitable, I can't avoid it, of being an Asian American woman in a predominantly white group, and being also the lead of this film, and it making just so much sense. Like I had to really acknowledge the fact that I have felt, and I think a lot of people of color have felt invisible, and like their voice didn't matter, and like just not really having a sense of self or self confidence. And so it was honestly very cathartic for me to go through this transformation with Ever and see her come into her own.
Well, I'm glad you got to undertake that then. I think you do a phenomenal job in the film. I think Marcus and everybody else also did incredible with it. And I can't wait to spread the word about it. Thank you so much for taking the time to chat. I really appreciate it.